we'll trying to hit on the most important points that we believe need to be addressed going into the season to ensure you're as best prepared as possible for what's ahead. A couple of people with me that I would like to ask that they introduce themselves quickly as well. I'll start with Mr. Jutka. Eric Jutka is on. Maybe Eric, you can take 30 seconds to introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Absolutely, and thank you, Coach Rubin, for running this meeting tonight. I think it's extremely important, especially having been in everyone's shoes before. So my name's Eric Judka. I am the WSA Girls Travel VP. I will be one of your main points of contact should you have any questions throughout the season as you're getting started with coaching the team. And if you have any questions as the season goes on, you can reach out to myself or my counterpart, Alan Poehler, who's unable to join us tonight, who is the boys Travel VP. I put both of our emails in the chat, so please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. And also, if you have any questions tonight, just put them in the chat and we'll either answer them directly or we will address them on the call or get back to you if it's something that requires further attention.
All right, thank you for that. With us is also Rich Pardo, who wears many different hats. Rich, maybe you can take 30 seconds or so to introduce yourself as well, given that you'll be sharing a lot of emails with everyone throughout the season.
Yes, thanks, Ruben. Hi, everyone. As Ruben said, I'm Rich Pardo. I'm the WSA Club Administrator. Prior to that, I was the VP of Boys Travel. I also coached for 6 years and was a manager for 6 years. So I was in the same spot that you guys were all in years ago. I've seen a lot that goes on with the club. I'm involved with pretty much everything that goes on with the club. You will get to know me very well throughout the season. And if you have any questions about anything, do not be afraid to email me. No question is a stupid question. You guys are all new, so that's about it.
All right, so thank you, Eric and Rich. So I'll get started. If at any point you have any questions, just submit them into the chat. I'll try to address them as soon as I can. Eric, if you could just do me a favor, maybe monitor the chat as best as possible. That way, once I stop, I'll address anything that needs to be addressed. On occasion, Eric and or Rich may chime in as well. As I said, challenging to do such a thing via Zoom, but it's still very doable. I am going to, as I said, make it somewhat interactive. There's no need for people to unmute and speak up. You can use the chat. But without any further ado, preseason meeting for under-9 parent coaches. So quickly want to go through a couple, I would say very important things. I'm just wanting to take a minute or so to share with you our vision and mission, and also followed by our values, just so you understand what we're about. This is something that we spend a lot of time on as an organization. We not too long ago redid our vision, mission, and values as well. And anyone getting involved or involved with your organization should have some knowledge of, because this drives a lot of what we do. So, you can read through all this yourself. I'll give you about 20 seconds or so. This is our mission statement. The key here, is there's a couple key words here. Children of all abilities. Obviously, the community is a big part of what we do, and personal growth for everyone involved. I would say that we're, as an organization, proud to be able to offer something to anyone, no matter their age, gender, or ability, which includes youth programs all the way through U23 and the UCFC side, and even the Westfield Winners, which has been running for 8 years strong, which is a fantastic, which has been a fantastic addition to our club as well. So our mission and our vision. So as you can see, our vision is to be the best community enriching youth sports club, and you all on this call play a huge part in us achieving our objectives, or our vision, so to speak, fulfilling our vision. And that's why we're also doing these type of calls to include you in all that we do, to make sure you have greater knowledge and are as best prepared as possible for what's ahead. So our vision and mission. So our core values, I'll go through them really quickly. All these can be found on the website as well. All right. I don't want to go too fast for you. In short, these are our 7 core values: respect, quality, inclusion, whole play development, commitment, sportsmanship, and teamwork. All right, moving on. So one thing that I share with all coaches, obviously with the professional coach, but I also want to highlight this with all of you guys, the importance of being intentional about all that you do. As we stated before, I just want to take this away really quick. I stated before, our vision is to be the best youth of a community enriching youth sports club. We need you. We need your help achieving that or achieving that goal, meeting that objective. And everything that we do needs to be done with a thought behind it, as in based on the why. And we have an expectation of everyone involved with the organization to help us be successful. Now, when you're intentional, you choose to make decisions and take action on what's really important to you. Being intentional means getting clear up front about what you want to achieve. You intentionally set an intention to achieve a specific outcome or result in the future. Now, we'll touch on this as we go through it. You'll see that everything that I shared with you tonight, there's a thought behind it. There's a why behind all that we do. In the end, making sure that our players are given the opportunity to fall in love with the sport, enjoy the experience, and grow both on and off the field. So there's a couple of core tenets that are part of development philosophy that impact both our training as well as our coaching methods. But before we do so, I would love everyone just to use the chat, as I said, as interactive as we possibly can be. I really want to know from you why you think not only your child plays soccer or maybe even sports, because I know there's quite a few kids who play multiple sports, and good for them. But why do children play sports? What do you think? So if you can, just use the chat. I'll monitor the chat right now. All right. Why do children play sports? I'll give you about 30 seconds or so to go through this. All right. And with about 12 to 15 people on, I expect quite a few responses here as well. It's good to go through this just to make sure you have it straight for yourself as well. Why do children participate in sport? I mean, in essence, right, everyone is hitting the nail on the head, but having fun is a key driver. And there's some other reasons why kids participate in sports. Also highlighted here. But what makes it fun, right? That is the question. And we'll touch on that shortly as well. If you recently took a state coaching certificate course, and I was part of I was the instructor, we touched on that during that course as well. But first things first, right? Our core tenets, the WSA development philosophy. So 3 things that are at the heart of all that we do. We know, and there's a reason why I'm still involved in the sport, and many others are still involved with this sport. We want to make sure that it's such a good experience that kids fall in love with the sport and stick with it in whatever capacity that may be. That could be as a fan, as a professional coach, as a parent coach, whatever it may be. If we do things right, kids will stick with it and play at a standard that they're interested in, but again, they'll stick with it for the years to come. That's our objective, right? To ensure that learning takes place, we've got to make sure the kids love what they're doing. Simple. All right. And it's easy to forget this, but children participate in sports and they take part in this activity because they want to, not because they have to. Simple. It shouldn't become a chore. As soon as it becomes a chore, kids will lose interest in the activity, unfortunately. So provide the kids with a sport for life. Now we'll delve a little deeper shortly when we talk about the child-centered environment, but it needs to be safe, right? So as coaches, you can definitely demand things. You can definitely take kids outside their comfort zone, and a good coach can take a child somewhere where he or she wouldn't be able to go or get on their own. However, the players also need to know that you got their back. All right, that's how simple it is. All right, it's not just all stick, there needs to be some carrot as well. But when I think back to all my athletic experiences, some of the best coaches I had were very demanding, but I also knew that when push came to shove, they were there for me when I needed them. All right. It's really, really important to know that, and I like to call it failure doesn't exist, but mistakes are part of the learning experience. That's how simple it is. We can't expect anyone to be perfect. I don't think there's such a thing as being perfect to begin with. Perfectionism actually often leads to developing a fixed mindset, which can hold back your personal growth as well. But failure doesn't exist. Kids need to make mistakes to get better at what they do. I mean, I wish I could tell you that I'm perfect, but my wife is the first one to point out that that's also not the case. To do so, we also got to find a way to normalize mistakes. That's how simple this. All right. If we find a way to address it accordingly and support kids through the process, they're gonna have that. It's truly a child-centered environment, a safe environment. And last but not least, as part of the game that we play, we want to develop capable and confident, as well as independent decision makers. Right, that's key to a lot of what we do as well. So we try to train as much as we can in a game-like environment, while highlighting here that we don't neglect the technical development of our players. All right, some people seem to be of the belief that because we train almost all the time in a game-like environment, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but because we train in a game-like environment so often that we neglect the technical development of our players, but that's not true. But I'll touch on that shortly as well. All right. It's really important that throughout this process, players are allowed to make their own decisions on the field. There's a big difference between coaching versus controlling, which I'll touch on as we start talking about the role of the coach. All right. And we want players to take charge. All right. We want players to take charge on the field. We got to allow them then also to take ownership of their own development as well as the development of the team. All right. So provide players with a sport for life, create a safe environment, and develop capable and confidence as well as independent decision makers. So the three core tenets of our WSA development philosophy. If you have any questions about that, obviously please use the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to assume I'm as clear as I could be as I move on. So the impact of our development philosophy. So I would love you to think about this one. Use the chat as well. How would you describe a coach-centered environment? So I just talked about a child-centered environment and how we want to create a child-centered environment, but to some it may not be clear what one is versus the other. If you think about what kind of things would you see in a coach-centered environment? Again, we use the chat for this one. Not talking about the child-centered environment right now, but an environment in which the coach is in control and the coach basically dictates everything. What would you see happen in a coach-centered environment? All right. So can you use the chat and share with me your thoughts on this as well? And again, given that we have close to 15 people on this call, hope you're willing to take part in all this, because right now, so I've only had one reply so far, although it is a good one. Winning as the goal over kids having fun. Excellent. Results over process / development. This one is very good as well. Feeding the ego of the coach, and it could be done in a variety of different ways. Mike, I like your contribution as well. Lots of drills, no creativity. Making the decisions for the kids. Thank you, Mr. Pardos. Results. And by the way, we care about winning, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't be the main driver of all that we do. At especially the younger age, mistakes are part of, and we have to allow kids to make these mistakes. But in a coach-centered environment, I mean, one comment that I saw about the ego of the adult, or sometimes even the ego of the adults involved, it takes over. Now, I went online, I think about this a lot, and I looked up a definition of what is a child-centered environment. All right, they talk a lot about this in education as well. So I'll share it with you shortly. A lot of you guys mentioned having fun being the main driver for kids to participate in sports. Now, at some point, if you have some time, I highly recommend you look up Amanda Vishek. She did research on this specifically and developed the fun maps, which basically gives you 11 fun determinants. Why do kids play sports? Right, it wasn't just youth soccer. There's other sports involved as well. And this research was very interesting because it comes directly from the children. It's not done by adults providing adults with feedback. It literally is children providing feedback. And why do they play? And it's anywhere from being with their friends to improving to being proud to wear that club gear, to having team parties. Winning is mentioned along the way as well, but out of the 80+ reasons given, it only landed somewhere around the 50th spot or something out of the 80+ reasons given why kids play in sports. I highly recommend you look into this as well. So I talked about the fun determinants and the fun factors, but why do kids play sports? There's a lot of reasons why. Like, fun in itself is, yes, how you would capture it all together, but there's a lot of different reasons why kids play sports. I highly recommend, again, you look up Amanda Vishek and the fun maps. Another thing that I really want to highlight, and again, I go too fast sometimes. So the self-determination theory, and I share this with every parent that I speak to, no matter if it's a team meeting or a one-on-one conversation. But we always talk about kids needing to be motivated to do well. Now, to ensure that they're in an environment that they're given a chance to do well, there's certain needs that need to be satisfied. And there's some basic psychological needs that really impact our motivation. We always talk about kids needing to be intrinsically motivated to do well. The self-determination theory is based on 3 basic needs. One is belonging, which, in a team environment, kids really need to feel they're part of, right? As soon as we feel we're part of, we're more likely to open ourselves up and challenge ourselves. If we feel we don't belong, we're going to struggle. And again, it's a basic psychological need. Another one is competence. We want to feel that we're capable of something and that we're getting better as we go as well. And the last one is autonomy. Going back to independent decision makers, and some of you guys highlighted that, and thank you for sharing that as well in your comments earlier as well. Kids need to be given a chance to own the experience. That's how simple this. So as I said, these are 2, the research done by Amanda Vishek. Highly recommend you do a little more research on your own to find out really what drives kids when they play sports. And again, the self-determination theory, the basic psychological needs of an individual that need to be fulfilled for us to be intrinsically motivated, because that's what we want to go to, right? Give them a sport for life. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. If you have any questions, again, use the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to move on. So child-centered environment, give you 30 seconds to read this. This is something that I found online to describe a child-centered environment. There is obviously a reason why I asked you about describing that coach-centered environment or an adult-centered environment based on the needs of the adult or adults involved. If we do it well and we do develop a player-centered approach, a child-centered approach, we will do very well, right? As long as it's based on their needs, not on our needs. All right. So a couple of things I want to touch on quickly, but before we do, if you don't mind, all right, you can use the chat for this again. If you had to describe the game of soccer, right, what are the characteristics of the sport, right? What words, what short sentences would you use to describe the game of soccer? So again, use the chat, please, but describe the characteristics of the game of soccer. All right, using the chat, please. I'll give you 30 seconds. What makes soccer so unique compared to other sports, for example? Here we go. Again, what characteristics are, like, can you use, or can, what are the characteristics, I should say, of the sport soccer? So So I see fast moving, lots of action, possession, passing, shooting, constant motion, team game, constant movement, constant communication, movement, communication, fast pace, skillful, high speed, movement of the ball. Love it. Beautiful, free flowing strategy, patience, endurance, teamwork. So if you really break it down to the basics, right? Soccer is unique in itself already because the type of skills needed to do well in the sport. There's not many sports where you use your feet almost exclusively, unless you're obviously the goalkeeper, and maybe for the moment the ball needs to be thrown back on the field from a throw-in. But that in itself already impacts your training methods, your coaching methods. But a lot of you guys mentioned, it's fast-paced, lots of movement, which impact decision making. There's always something happening around you. You always have to read your environment and act accordingly. But I said, perceive and conceive, and then based on your perception, make decisions on what happens. Now, understanding the dynamics of the game, right? It's really important to ensure that you train players so they're prepared for the game. All right, so our training methods are heavily influenced by that, as well as the most up-to-date research. And that's one of the reasons that we train as much as we possibly can in a game-like environment. Right, again, we're not neglecting the technical development of our players, because you can focus on that in the environment that we've created, and we should focus on that in the environment that we create. But basically summarize our training methods, right? If you had asked me about 15 years ago, maybe 10 years even, I would have talked to you about players need as many touches on the ball in a session. I still firmly believe that. But touches out of context won't help a player get much better, all right? There's two things that we need to focus on. It's the decision making, as in the decision made, as well as the execution of the decision. So if players have to make 1,000 decisions and execute those decisions, then we know we're in a good environment. Then we know we're challenging our players to be better, right? Which means players are pushed, challenged. But in such an environment, the transfer of knowledge is far greater than if the decisions are not included and we only focus on the touches, if that makes sense. Right, so in my email, was it last week? I think it was last week, reminding everyone of this meeting, I shared a video on block training versus block practice, and random training. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it, all right? Because there's someone that did a great video on this and has done a lot of research on this that explains it even better than I did. What the difference is between one and the other, and what the benefits are of one versus the other, right? So given the limited time that we have, it sounds like we have a lot of time, but we don't have a lot of time. We train as much as we can in context, right? To ensure, and that's what I said before, that there's an optimal transfer. There's a greater transfer of knowledge if you train in context. That's the short of it, right? We focus on two things, right? We looked at the individual, all right? And at an early age, it's largely individual development that we look at. It's decision-making and execution. They go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. We're not sacrificing one over the other. It's both. And to show you a little example, all right? So there's two set up on the left, a simple passing drill, if you will, right? Where balls are placed, counterclockwise from cone to cone. Players are moving off the cone, receiving, potentially opening up far foot, and passing the one, jogging along as they go. I have done those exercises, drills, I think is a better way of describing it. I've done those drills plenty of times. Maybe on occasion, I still use it as a activation activity, especially with older players as part of the warm-up. Over time, in an environment like that, you will get the feeling that players are improving. But actually what's happening in that context at that moment in time, their performance is improving because they're doing the same thing over and over again. Your brain actually becomes lazy in that type of environment because it's just not challenged enough. But the performance in that environment is improving. However, it doesn't necessarily impact the overall development in the long run. Right? There's a big difference between increased performance in that drill versus actual learning. Deep breath on my end. Now moving to the right side. All right, if you look at that activity there, and it's just a basic rondo, and it's still not super game-like, but the big difference here is because there's two defenders involved, all right, it certainly becomes more game-like because there's decisions to be made, right? And the decisions that need to be made are based on the defenders inside that little box defending. suddenly it's not cut and dry. It's not clear that you always have to go to your right and then follow your pass. No, you constantly got to move, read your environment, and act accordingly. And your first touch under pressure of the opponent is challenged based on what the opponent does. For example, when you receive the ball, you got to determine how to receive the ball so you can pass it on again. Big difference. In the short term, you may not see huge gains yet, but over time, gains from such activities, and this is still very basic, it doesn't even include goals yet, are far greater in the long run. There's a far greater transfer of information from one to the other. All right. Anyone, any questions about any of this before I move on? I hope this is clear. All right. Again, there's still a possibility, and we focus, especially the younger age, on the individual ability on the development of the individual ability of our players, which is key given their age and where they are. But we do it in combination, decision making and execution. Any questions about any of that? Now, impact of our development philosophy, what I shared with you guys before, on our coaching habits and methods. All right. So we mentioned coaching versus controlling. There's a big difference between one and the other. A good coach is able to observe and analyze and determine what's needed. All right. And at a younger age, you're really helping players through the decision-making process when they go on the field or off the field, versus controlling everything they do when they're on the field. Right. In a coach-centered environment, you're trying to control everything the players do. Right. Big difference between one and the other. Right. Again, something to research. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. I hope you guys aren't overwhelmed yet. But years ago, there was a gentleman, a professor, last name Stroop, who proved that interference impacts performance, which really means that if I'm on the ball and I have a coach on one end of the field, maybe two coaches or three coaches on one side of the field, screaming at me what I need to do, and I'm exaggerating here a little bit. Now add the parental sideline as well, where some parents are also telling me what to do. There's a lot to process. Even if it's just one person telling me what to do, that in itself will already delay my decision-making process, because now I have to process more. I am not just forced to process what happens on the field around me. I also have to process what people are telling me. Interference impacts performance. You may feel better trying to control the decisions, but in the long run, you're actually hurting the overall development of the players in your care. All right. So I mentioned observe and analyze. I've calmed down a lot myself as a coach. One thing that has helped me a lot is talking to other coaches on the sideline with me, or writing things down, so I can actually be more effective as a coach come game day for my players. With that, make sure you have one voice on the sideline. Now, every team is assigned a head coach. The head coach is that voice. If the professional coach comes to the game, let the professional coach take charge. All right. Anyone involved as a parent coach can learn from the knowledge of the knowledgeable individuals that are part of our coaching staff. All right. We want to make sure players learn to play the game based on the principles. So when we don't play with set positions, right, we actually rotate players over to different positions, including in the goal. However, I do need to stress, and this is where a lot of confusion happens, that what we mean by that is over the course of a season. That doesn't mean that little Ruben, when he goes out on the field, that he plays every position in one game. Try, as you organize yourself accordingly, to give players maybe two positions a game, and maybe have them play 2 or 3 positions for 2 or 3 weeks straight, so they get some familiarity there, gain a little bit of confidence, and then rotate it through out the season. Right, that way little Ruben is given a chance to get more comfortable, but still being exposed to different positions. And again, this applies to all positions, including the goalie position. Right, at U9 and U10, we rotate every child into the goal, and the reason that we do it is twofold. One, it's to learn to respect the position. That's how simple this. Right, it's not an easy position to play. Two, the parents will also start to respect the position a lot more, because they'll act a lot differently when their own child is in the goal. Playing goalie is one of the hardest positions to play, right? But starting to play goalie full time at a young age is detrimental for your overall development. Right? So overall, play the game based on the principles rather than just based on 1 or 2 positions. As I said, players are given a chance to play every position over the course of the season. try to limit it to a maximum of 3 per game. Maybe keep it steady for a few weeks and then rotate them through. So Lil Ruben again plays a little bit of defense for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Then he plays more in the midfield for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then he maybe plays a little bit of offense as well as plays in goal or something along those lines. All right. And again, we talked about decisions. I hope this one is very clear. This is a player's game. This is a game where the players need to make the decisions. So allow them to make those decisions. Right. A lot of you are familiar with this, given the feedback received thus far. All right. Just so you know, in an environment in which children are allowed to make mistakes, they're comfortable making mistakes and therefore are willing to take a risk. As soon as an individual is reprimanded for making a mistake, all right, they won't take any risks anymore. Right. Unfortunately, our environment creates a lot of robots because of the structure that they find themselves in, not just in youth soccer, but in general. All right. They already struggle to be as creative as they possibly can be. If we reprimand players after taking some risk, making mistakes, they will struggle to become the creative players that we want to develop, the independent and capable decision makers that I spoke about earlier. All right. Take a deep breath here. I'm making good time. Anyone, any questions about anything shared so far? All right, because if there's no questions, then I assume everyone is clear on this. So I'm already at the 7-a-side system of play that we utilize at U9, U10. All right, as you can tell, 7 positions, including the goal player. All right, a right and a left central defender. We call this a holding mid, a number 6, a right winger, a left winger, and a number 9. Right. All players, as said before, are to be rotated over all positions throughout the season. Okay. All right, Richard, are you still online, or did I lull you to sleep already?
I'm
Mr.
here.
Pardo? All right,
I'm
can you
here.
do me a favor, given that you are our referee? So
Yes.
last week we sent something out with the updated guidance of New Jersey Youth Soccer in regards to the build-out line. Can you just talk people through the different changes on the build-out line? I think on my next slide, I actually have the different scenarios that we talk about. There we go. So there's 2 instances in which the build-out line is in effect. Can you just touch on this really quick so there's clarity for everyone across the board?
Yes. Well, for some people who haven't been coaches before, I'll say the build-out line acts as where in a standard 11v11 game or a 9v9 game, offsides is that it starts at the center line. In the 7v7 game, it actually starts at the build-out line. So what happens is when either the ball goes over the end line or from the attacking team, or it goes to the goalkeeper, what then has to happen is the attacking team then has to drop behind the build-out line, which is shown with 2 cones and the line going across. So essentially that's acts as kind of like the center stripe. So because you're trying to give the team that then has the ball time to build from the back. So what happens is the attacking team cannot go in to attack the ball until a couple of things happen. First, if it's a goal kick or any type of free kick with inside the build-out line, the attacking team cannot attack the ball until the team that's kicking the ball either kicks it to a teammate and the teammate touches it inside the build-out line. That's number 1. If the ball comes to a rest anywhere inside the build-out line, or the ball goes past the build-out line without touching anybody. So that's with a goal kick or a free kick. When the goalie has the ball, what happens is the attacking team has to retreat behind the build-out line. They cannot then attack the ball until one of a couple things happen. Either the goalie throws it to one of his teammates and the teammate touches the ball. So once the teammate touches the ball, then the opposing team can go in. Or if the goalie drops the ball to their feet, which is considered a change in possession from the feet to the hand, from the hands to the feet, at that point, the opposing team can go in and attack the ball, or when the ball goes across the build out line if the goalie happens to throw it that far. Does anybody have any questions? Now the change that actually I'll say the change that they made was the from last year to this year was the dropping the ball, the goalie dropping the ball at their feet, because you'll find that there are some teams where the goalies are actually very good at playing the ball. And previously they would just drop the ball and they could take their time and find a player, but they've kind of taken that out of the mix. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, Eric, is it first touch, second touch? It is second touch. So again, on a kick, second touch to a teammate inside the build-out line, that's when the attacking team can go in and attack the ball. When it's in the goalie's hands, it's a second touch when they throw it to a teammate, when a teammate touches the ball, or when they drop the ball at their feet. And then another, what happens if they don't retreat, Eric asked? Well, what will happen is, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to be an indirect free kick from the point of the infraction. Some referees will call things differently. They may actually do a retake. It shouldn't be that. It should be it should be where the point of infraction happens. Some referees will just allow, you know, a minor infraction. If the kid's not that close to the ball, they'll let it play. But essentially, you're not supposed to go in until there is a second touch. Any other questions? And also, actually, if there are any other questions, what you should always do before each game, since they've changed the rules slightly, confer with the referee prior to the game to find out what they're going to call. I am a referee, so for U9s and U10s, I go over what I am going to call with each team before every game. And because previously the leagues had different rules with the build-out line, so it was a necessity to do that. I still think it's a necessity for referees to go over it, simply because there have been changes, and just so you know how they're supposed to call it. So.
All right, thank you for that, Richard. Very helpful. So as I said, Rich definitely wears many hats, and that's one of the many he does wear. So hopefully there's no questions about the build-out line. There's obviously an opportunity for us as we get ready for the season. All the U9 teams will be playing in a festival on the 10th of September. We'll make sure that, you know, it is basically a tournament with referees, albeit a friendly festival, where our players are given a chance to get used to the build-out line, and you as coach are also given a chance to adjust to it. The information I shared with you guys on the build-out line last week is something you can share with the parents as well, so they are familiar with, because there are quite a few parents that, one, aren't even aware of the build-out line, two, don't know how it works, and three, don't even know why this is being implemented. But obviously, as it even stated in the email that I shared with you guys, coming from New Jersey Youth Soccer, it is to help every kid, every team learn to play out of the back in a less pressurized situation. That's how simple it is. As artificial as it may be, that's why this has been implemented. And it's been used the last couple of years. And hopefully now there's no confusion anymore between referees and from league to league on how it should be called. All right, what I also did, if you look at the chat, I shared a link to a YouTube video, which you can look at later, right? In which you see some scenarios in which the build-out line goes in effect, and also what happens when an opponent leaves the build-out line too soon, for example, based on some game material of teams taken over the spring last season. Now, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to share something with you again, and I ask a lot of people this question quite often. If you can, click on the link that I just shared with you. It'll take you to a different screen. Use words to describe your ideal youth coach. It doesn't even have to be a soccer coach. How would you describe the ideal youth coach? All right, I'll give you, let's do 1 minute. You know, it's a change of pace, 1 minute. I just gotta start my stopwatch. All right, how would you describe your ideal youth coach? What words would you, what qualities does a good youth coach need to possess? Yep, starting now. Awesome. I see some of you guys thinking already. I like that. All right, so I see some very positive and exciting things coming through. I'll give you guys a chance to finish it up. Hopefully everyone is on the actual screen so you can see what's being shared by everyone before I go back to the presentation, because I want to highlight first and foremost what's addressed here. So the last little bit of the presentation, we'll discuss your role as a coach. All right, we touched on some different things already, our development philosophy, the impact of our development philosophy on our training and coaching methods, some rules of play being used at U9, different from, if you want to call that way, the adult version of the game. Now we're going to talk about your role as a coach. Now, it's really helpful to think through this. And every time I do this, whether it's in person, where I've done this exercise before where I use Post-its, asking people to do this, or if I do it this way using the Padlet, the same thing shows, like the same thing happens all the time. If I had to categorize all the feedback provided in two categories, one largely focused on the X's and O's, and one focused on your ability as a people's manager. I don't want to even say focus on the soft skills. Where would you place a lot of these qualities? Now, there's not much highlighted here on the importance, I should say, on knowledge on X's and O's, which is definitely helpful. All right, but I'll tell you right now, some of the best youth coaches that I've seen don't have a background in the sport themselves, but they're very good with the kids they work with. All right, being able to manage them effectively, being able to communicate effectively with children, making it about their needs, going back to the child-centered environment is so key to your success and therefore our success. All right, again, you could know anything and everything about the game, but if you create a coach-centered environment to satisfy your own ego, as highlighted before, you're not going to do well. That's how simple it is. So I appreciate all the enthusiasm on this specific activity. And hopefully this paints you a good picture of the qualities really that are important maybe to have and or develop. Understanding that, when you coach at U9, some of the kids are 7 years old starting at U9, putting things in perspective. All right, so going back to share the screen. So we're getting close. We're getting towards the end. As I said, mindful of your time. Yeah, do the build outline. Yeah, we did the build outline. All right, so the role of the coach. Oh, there we go. All right, so a couple different slides, and I'll go through them quickly, making sure that hopefully it's clear to all this. So every team is assigned a head coach and has one assistant, maybe two assistant coaches, and then a professional coach, if that coach is not the head coach, by the way. Now, it's really important that you, as it states over here, divide duties. So everyone knows going into it what is expected of them. Maybe one person takes care of the substitutions. Maybe one person talks to the players when they come off the field. So you have one voice on the sideline. All right. I always, I don't, can I say the EBGBs? When I walk by a field and I see multiple people shouting at players during a game, I notice something off. All right. So make sure that it's clear that there is one voice on the sideline. when the professional coach is there, let the professional coach take charge. There's a reason why we bring these individuals in, because of not just because, but for their knowledge and experience. All right. Any preparing coach can learn from those professional coaches that we have brought on to work with and for us. Make sure, as I said before, you divide duties so there's clarity. And just so you know, there's only 3 coaches allowed on the sideline come game day. Now, if in the scenario that you have 1 head coach, 2 assistant coaches, okay, and the professional coach shows up, one of the parent coaches does need to go to the parent sideline. Maybe you rotate that when this occurs, and it has nothing to do with us not appreciating you for what you bring to the environment, but that's simply a rule set forth by New Jersey Youth Soccer. We can only have 3 coaches on the sideline come game day. Now, a couple different scenarios in which we rely on the help of our parent coaches. All right, for our under 9s, all right, we run Saturday training sessions. I honestly don't know the times for the girls and boys on top of my head. However, it's really important to note that the parent coaches run these sessions, but these sessions will be supported, led by a lead coach. So for the under 9 boys, Coach Alejandro, who's going to be working with our under 9 boys A team, is also the lead coach. He's expected to be at every Saturday training for the under 9 boys. He will provide training content for all the under 9 boys parent coaches based on our development philosophy in line with our age appropriate priorities. So there's support for all the parent coaches. He will be there for the boys. Coach Paul, who's assigned to work with the under 9 girls A, he will do the same thing for the under 9 girls age group. The parent coaches are there to run the sessions. He's there to support them. Very simple. All right. And again, we're not going to overcomplicate things. We want to make sure that you have everything you need to do well. That's why we have the lead coach there. And to ensure that there's continuity from weekday to Saturday sessions, that's why we have a lead coach. Now, come the Sunday games, assuming that all the games are on Sunday. Again, divide duties, 1 voice on the sideline, rotate players over all positions, as highlighted before, and try to find a way to even out playing time as much as you can across the season. All right, so by law, like by our bylaws, we have a rule that every player should be playing 50% of the time. Now, there's no reason for that to be more than 50%. Assuming that, you know, all the players are able to hang in there. Now, just understand that when I say equal playing time, just measure it out over the course of the season. So there may be moments that 1 player or 2 players or 3 players play a little bit more in 1 game, maybe a few play a little less in that same game. Then you make sure you even it out in the next game. That's how simple it is. Maybe in 1 game, some players are struggling a little bit for whatever reason because of the strength of the opposition potentially. Then you make sure that the next game around, when maybe opposition is not as strong, they get more game time. So that over the course of the season, not only are the kids given 50% of the playing time, they're getting more, well given a chance to experience success and do well. All right. And as I said before, when it comes to rotating players over all positions, all right, make sure that's done in such a manner that they're not rotated over all 7 positions in 1 game. Give them a chance to get used to a couple positions, play them in those positions for a couple of weeks before moving on to different positions. All right, but that way they learn, as stated before, they learn to play the game based on the principles of the game, not just based on positions. All right, any questions about that so far? All right, last but not least, it's important, and I hope by now that every parent coach has been able to communicate and connect with the professional coach assigned to your team. If that at any point hasn't happened yet, please let me know. Now, make sure that after speaking to the professional coach, you set the expectations for the players, the parents. It's important to have a pre-season parents meeting where you can go through all the logistics needed, talk about what is expected of players as well as of the parents and how the parents can be a helpful part of the experience, right? Just so you know, and this is really key to know, we as a club hold on to a 24-hour rule, which really means that we don't want coaches to get into discussions with parents on playing time and positions right after a game, because that's if one of the worst moments in time to have that conversation. If parents have any questions, it's always good to address them, but don't do that right after the game. Wait at least 24 hours before addressing those issues. And if at any point, when it comes to communication, you have any issues, right? Mr. Jutka, our VP of Girls Travel, already shared his email address. He also shared Alan Poe's email address, our VP of Boys Travel. Now you should have my email address by now. And Rich just shared your email, his email address. If you have any questions, reach out to us. I'm, as you can tell, largely in charge of the coaches and on the content of training sessions and the education of the players as well as the coaches. Rich is very important when it comes to scheduling and scheduling issues, and other administrative challenges can be communicated with our VPs of travel. All right. That's an awful lot of information. I'll give you 30 seconds to read through this, and then if you have any questions, this is the best time to ask them, but read through this one first. All right. So anyone, any questions about anything that was just shared with you via this presentation? I'm just going to stop sharing in the meantime. Otherwise, I assume I was as clear as could be. All right,
I'll
any
just
questions
jump
about
in
training
very quickly.
schedule? You go for Mr. Jutka before I continue to fill silence.
Yeah, there was no questions, but just for those that are first time U9 coaches, I would say lean on your peers that are here. Feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Rich. Some of the best advice, honestly, that I've got that I still heed to this day came from Rich early on when I was a U9 coach. So I definitely recommend reaching out and steal shamelessly from anybody as far as tips, techniques, etc. There's we're all in this together, and we all want to see everyone succeed. Ruben, you're muted.
It doesn't happen often, as Eric knows. So if you don't have any questions, I appreciate you guys coming on. I told you I have tons of things to go through, but I also want to be mindful of your time. Then please go back to the slides that I shared with you for review. If anything comes up, reach out. But again, enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for coming on tonight, and we'll make sure we see each other on the field very soon. All right. So again, if you have no further questions, please just log off and go enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thanks a lot, Ruben. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.